Everyone is of age. No dolls, stuffed animals, cardboard cutouts, please. My name is Nicholas Robert Gallo, and this is my persuasive speech for the University of Maryland University College Communications 100 class. Take 3. Tonight I'll be talking about the necessity of space exploration, particularly exploring the argument to increase federal funding. Before I get into that, I'd like to give you a brief history of NASA and give you a kind of a context as to why it is important to continue funding and increase funding for it. The 1940s is really when space exploration was born. Rocketry was being used by both Axis and Allied powers during the war, and the Nazis were way ahead of the rest of the world in rocketry. So there was a competition between the Axis and Allied powers to develop the technology. We really saw this take off after the war, where the United States and the USSR fought for the, not actually fought, but competed to grab the German scientists that developed rocketry, which resulted in a space race beginning in 1950, where the United States sought to launch the first geosynchronous orbiting satellite. We actually ended up losing that particular race to the USSR in 1957 when they launched Sputnik. This brought the United States back to reality and helped us realize that we weren't as technologically advanced as we wanted to think we were from the rest of the world. As a result of that, in 1958, on October 1st, NASA was formed. Not even 3 years later, the United States was the first country to put a human into space, which is a significant achievement, to say the least. 8 years after that, there was the moon landing. Mind you, this is 11 years after NASA was formed, starting with a budget of $100 million. It's quite the achievement. From there, budget increased. We see amazing things like unmanned missions to Mars, Venus, actual first-time footage of both of those planets from a camera transmitted back to us. In 1989, the Soviet Union collapsed, and after that we saw collaboration between the Russian Federation and the United States. In particular to note, in 1993 collaboration began and the construction began of the International Space Station. It's a permanent human settlement in space. Very significant. A lot of technologies have benefited us in our everyday lives and we don't realize it. What I'm going to do now is go through some of those technologies and help you to see how they might have affected your life. Now, I can't go over all the technology that was a result of space exploration, but I will pick out some of the more notable ones. Communications, major area where we have been benefited from space exploration, in particular satellites. Satellites have helped us do a lot of things that we would otherwise not be able to do, particularly instant communication between two or people on either side of the planet. Allows us to develop accurate maps of the planet. Before they were just hand drawn, but now we can actually see what our planet looks like, what other planets look like. We see stuff like intel gathering of our enemies. National security is massively impacted by the deployment of satellites. Weather tracking, that's another thing. We wouldn't be able to see some of the hurricanes that are approaching the continental United States without the ability to look down from a satellite. And television. Television has been hugely impacted by satellites, and which are a result of space exploration. Medical advances such as infrared ear thermometers, which help doctors determine whether or not a person is going deaf or not, whether or not their eardrums are operating properly, have been a result of space technology adapted to the private sector. Originally, that was developed to read energy emitted from a star or a planet to determine what was going on with that planet. Now has been, like I said, adapted to medical use. Artificial limbs is a major area. We see a lot of prosthetic limbs that have been made nowadays that even have robotics in them that allow the person to use the limb by just thinking about it. That is a direct result of a need that NASA had and the technological fulfillment. They needed something that was durable and that would resist a lot of shock, but that was also lightweight to be able to lift it off into space. And as a result, the private sector again grabbed that technology and used it for medical advances. We see amazing things in transportation advances. Stuff like rumble strips that you never would have thought of as being a result of space exploration. radial tires, GPS, going back to satellites, but also talking about transportation. Anti-icing systems for airplanes on the wings called thermal wings that melts the ice right off the wings. Emergency response advances. We see stuff like fire retardant material that firefighters use being originally developed for astronauts to be able to withstand some of the more extreme environments of space. Heat blankets that we use for victims of disasters. Fibrous materials for parachutes that are more durable than the cloth materials that we had originally used. Air scrubbers that we use in airplanes now, or the firefighters use in their masks, originally designed to keep the astronauts air clean during long space travel. A lot of luxury advances like organic preservation, talking about freeze drying stuff, refrigeration advances, waste disposal is a major thing. LEDs, air conditioning and heating, Velcro, stuff like that has been majorly impacted by the need of what NASA had wanted for its astronauts to be able to survive in space. Now, unfortunately, we see a trend in the budget that has been given to NASA since its implementation in 1960. In 1960, it was $401 million. We saw an increase after the moon landing to 3.4, and it's kind of taken a step. Like it looks like steps kind of here. You'll notice between 1980 and 1990, a significant increase of from 3.4 to 4.9. Particularly, it ended up at 12.4 billion by 1990. From 2000 to 2010, we saw an increase of 5 billion, from 13.4 to 18.7 billion. Now, I'd like you to note that during the 1970 through 1980 decade, 1990 to 2000 decade, we've had Democrats in office, particularly between 2000 and 2017, 2010, 2017. Now, it just happens to be a trend of Democratic administrations to decrease the funding for NASA. It's not actually decreasing it, it's just not keeping it funded at the same level where you're increasing it every year to match for inflation. During the Republican administrations, we see the exact opposite. We see major increases. NASA shouldn't fall victim to political ideologies. This is something that we see the impact that it has on our lives, and it shouldn't be something that's affected by whether or not a Democrat or Republican is in office. We see a lot of private industry jumping in to take over some of the momentum and doing amazing things. But unfortunately, private industry is only motivated by making money. That's just how it works. So as a result, some of the technology that we could be developing or could be as a result of necessity for doing certain things that might not bring back monetary gain tend to suffer. So we see the future endeavors that we could be going for, stuff like permanent lunar settlements, asteroid mining, permanent Martian settlements, and other things like that. And we just need to continue funding to NASA and keep that steady increase every year to help develop our industry and science. That's my main argument, and thank you very much and have a good night.